patients are equally COVID fatigued. They're done. They're tired. This particular state I was in had a far longer period of being shut down, and things have been lifted. And there's some patients that are like, I'm not going to wear my mask. Why are you asking me these COVID screening questions anymore? Stop. So and the team is reacting to that as well. That's part of the symptoms that we found out later on.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices podcast. I'm Reagan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in. COVID fatigue is real. Every dental practice has encountered fatigue, be it with team or patients. The reality is COVID fatigue is contributing to the erosion of culture in dental practices, and it can be hard to spot before it's too late. You may see it as an employee that comes in happy one day and the next they're turning in the notice. Our guest today on Everyday Practices podcast is Joanne Miles, a business consultant with Productive Dentist Academy. Joanne is known as the Swiss Army knife for business. Having worked nearly every position in the practice, Joanne has a passion for providing proven methods of business operations and team development to give private practice docs the competitive edge they need to accelerate their practice. She brings positive energy and solutions to every obstacle I've seen her encounter, and she is the ideal person to tackle our topic of culture erosion today. I am joined by Joanne Miles and our podcast host, Dr. Chad Johnson. Dr. Chad, how are you?
What's up, everybody? I'm doing all right. Hey, our corn is knee-high by the 4th of July. I don't know if you know that's a saying, but our corn...
I did not know that was a saying.
Knee-high by the 4th of July. And I'll tell you what, I think we're waist-high in here in corn in middle America here in Iowa. So it's good farming.
Joanne, welcome to our podcast today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. It's really fun to be back with you guys again.
Where are you calling in from? Is there corn where you are?
Of course there is.
There is some. I'm in the Midwest as well, a little below Chad in the Kansas City area.
That's right.
And we have corn and we're surrounded with amazing barbecue.
Amazing barbecue. And Joanne, I want to know, are you a true KCMO person? Have you been to Slavinsky's Bakery in Liberty?
You know what? I have heard of it,
yes,
but I have not, only because I can't have most of what they bake.
Oh, okay. Then I'll leave it alone. But if people are listening and you're anywhere near KCMO or going through, you got to check out Slavinsky's on the north side in Liberty or Kearney. Maybe, I don't know. It's up there. Just
look it up. It might be on the border there, but it's, I have heard nothing but amazing things about it.
It's authentic. It's good stuff. So, hey, I have a question. What makes for a good culture in a dental office? Let's start with that. Let's define what's a healthy office culture.
A healthy office culture is one that actually provides, and I'm going to use this term, and I want you to hang with me here for a little bit, but it does provide this level of emotional safety. That's always been really important in a team culture, but it's now, because of COVID, it almost seems like it's come around to become the forefront of a lot of what people are talking about. So it's people have just been in general more fearful, and there's been a lot of uncertainty, and business as usual in dentistry, I've been doing this for 35 years, it's changed, and it's not going to be coming back anytime soon the way we thought it was going to be. There's this new norm, as people say. And so we have to be able to, I just sort of face it, stop resisting it, and just embrace it, and be able to create a safe environment for all of our employees to be able to just sort of express what's going on. But it's not just employees, it's patients. Patients need to also feel comfortable and safe and be able to have to ask questions and know that when they're coming to your practice, they're in good hands.
Because there's a bell curve of intuitiveness where some patients are going to roll with it and they have no idea what's going on. And some patients are subconsciously figuring out there's something different going on. And then there's some people that can spot it.
Yeah, no, there are. Patients are, patients are becoming educated now because of COVID. I mean, for years, we have felt like we've been fighting this uphill battle in educating our patients and about intervening in the disease process early intervention to prevent the immune system from being suppressed or being weakened. And we haven't had, we've had some good success, but COVID has helped in that regard. So now we have this patient base that have a bit of a higher dental IQ, if you will, or some of them think they, by Google has given a lot of fear as well. So we do need to be aware of that. And we do need to be able to address it and ask questions, ask patients about their concerns.
When you said the new norm, I thought on Pee-wee's Playhouse, how they used to have the word of the day. And so when you're like, the new norm, and then you said the new norm, I thought of the word of the day. And then everyone that was in the cast would go, like you're afraid or whatever. So they said the word of the day, new norm.
You're dating us.
But you know what? It's something that we have to deal with. I mean, whether you want to call it the new norm or if you're just rolling with things being different until they return to normal. I mean, let's call it, it's a semantics issue, but let's call it like it is. Things have changed.
Yeah, and nobody likes change.
Right. With that said, I mean, so Regan alluded to culture erosion. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
My best example would be recently I went in to do an in-office training with one of my clients. And this is a team this is an office, it's a large office, very successful office that has been serving their community for generations. And a team that have been there for a long time, they're a family. And we were going to go in there to talk about doing risk factor training and treatment plan presentation. And what I typically do is I like to get in there on the first day and just observe and just feel the pulse of the office, listen, hear things from the patient's perspective, just kind of look at all angles of things. And what became very apparent very quickly was I didn't hear a lot of laughter. I didn't see a lot of smiles. I almost felt like everyone was sort of walking on eggshells. The patients were being taken good care of, but there was just this palpable feeling in the office that concerned me. And
what did you notice? What did you notice on their faces?
It was just it was really that it was almost a silo feeling. Everybody was in their own little silo, just trying to kind of stay protective of their own space. And there wasn't just sort of that fun chatter and camaraderie that you typically will feel in an office, particularly with the longevity of this team and the closeness of this team and what I know about this team.
Well, I hate to make it about you, but did you wonder at first, like, is it something you said? I mean, did you wonder, like, is it me? It'd be like walking into a room where, all of a sudden they stop talking. And I wondered if you walked into the office, like you're walking into a room going, why all of a sudden is it like this? I mean, did it make you wonder for a minute?
Not really, because no. I have a great relationship with this team. And I'm not intrusive when I'm observing.
Sure. Could you tell that the patients knew?
The patients, again, so I would I'll back up and say maybe a little bit, because the patients are also on edge. So you talk about the emotions of culture of a practice and the erosions within the team, but patients are also bringing in their emotions too. Patients are equally COVID fatigued. They're done. They're tired. This particular state I was in had a far longer period of being shut down. And they and things have been lifted. And, there's some patients that are like, I'm not going to wear my mask. Why are you asking me these COVID screening questions anymore? Stop. So and the team is reacting to that as well. That's part of the symptoms that we found out later on, is one of the triggers for the team. And what I was seeing was the patients are just being mean.
How does it show up? I picture in my head, Joanne, since we are on the equal playing field of having gone through COVID, it's sort of like an emergency response. You just put your head down and you do what's right in front of you, and then you take a step, and then you take another step. And so you kind of get in the visual that I have is you just kind of head down doing work. So as you're observing, what are some of those symptoms that you saw? You said like nobody was really smiling and whatnot. And how do you bring that to the doctor's attention who is in this same environment? It's kind of like gaining weight. Like you do it slowly over time. Mm-hmm. And the only reason you really notice it is maybe like, oh, my jeans don't fit anymore. That's interesting. They must have been washed on hot. Like, how do you notice,
right.
So that you can catch it before it becomes kind of a crisis?
Right. So, after observing, and I just sort of, I checked in and I did ask some team questions, some sort of general curiosity questions about how things have been or what's going on, or how, what have you guys done lately as a team? And one of the things I found out is that because of all the restrictions, this team has not met once as a full collective team for 15 months. They have not met together.
Right.
And so I did take the owners aside that evening and said, look, I know that we had planned this type of training tomorrow, but here are my concerns. We can go ahead and implement these systems and really do some deep dives and some real good coaching and role playing with all the team. My concern is that if we don't address this elephant in the room, which is clearly sitting in the middle of the room, and because everybody's walking around it, that any system that we put in place is not really going to be that effective. And the type of exercise I was proposing to do in place is one that does not work over Zoom. It really, truly requires a lot of facilitating, a lot of asking questions, and keeping this space open for the team to be able to sort of peel off these layers and really discover the root cause of what's going on, and helping them discover for themselves. So the doctors said, you know what, we trust you. And you're right. There is something. I know what you're talking about. I do feel it. You just put words to it for me.
Wow. So that part is really interesting. Chad, I wanted to get your perspective because as a business owner, paying a consultant to come into office, in my mind, I'm walking down the path of, no, I want my team to learn risk factors and treatment planning so that we can be more profitable. We can diagnose better. The touchy-feely stuff is over here on the side. How would you, kudos to you, Joanne, to have that level of trust with the doctors. That says a lot about how you've held this relationship thus far. Do you think, Chad, that, had this happened in your practice, would you feel it the same way? Would you be ready to take that stop and say, yeah, you're right, let's change this direction and work on the culture piece?
If that were brought up, then it's an audible that when called on the line, I think is worth listening to. If there's a reason why the quarterback is changing the play on the line, he's seeing, the linebacker and figuring out, wait a second, we only have one more shot at this. I don't know. I understand that some people would be like, no, I'm the quarterback. Wait a second. You're calling the audible and you're the wide receiver. So personally, I would be cool with it because that's such a grave error to miss and not address, that if Carrie were to call that, I would let her have, the authority to make that change. But I can understand why some people might be like, no, but I'll tell you what, I'll address it next week. And but we need to focus on this. I don't think that would be the right way, but I could see that some dentists would really feel like they need to get their value out of it. I don't know, having the coach come back 6 months or 4 months later to readdress those concerns after you've addressed the audible, the elephant in the room, the problem, like the actual problem. No team chemistry is going to be rough to get through, and hope that risk factor discussion is going to change your profitability.
Mm-hmm.
And, and the thing is also that this is what I was proposing was an exercise that there is, it can be boggy ground. There can be landmines if it's not navigated in a very thoughtful manner. And sometimes having that third party who has really no stake in it, I don't have the emotions in it like the rest of the team, which is including the dentists. Being able to have that third party come in and facilitate a discussion that's going to take, 3 to 4 hours to really uncover some things, and then create these positive commitments and steps coming out of it to reinforce what it is that they all have collectively chosen as ways to move forward.
Open that up a little bit more. When you what I'm trying to do is also bring some value to, if someone said, listen, that's nice and all that, I'm trying to listen to this Productive Dentist Academy, AKA PDA stuff. But I'm not ready for coaching. I don't want to do that. Like I'm just not there. That would be me in 2010. Okay. So let's say that you're speaking and I'm speaking to that person right now saying, listen, just get the coaching, come to the workshops, figure it out. So yes, I'm all in now, but my old self would have said, okay, but how can you give me value to, if I wanted to DIY that? So if I wanted to patch the culture erosion in my office and I wanted to DIY it, what would the structure look like? If you said, okay, it was a Dear Ann kind of thing, and or Dear Abby, and you wrote in, and you were Joanne the Abby, and so this person wrote in and said, I want to fix it myself, whether I'm going to do a good job or not, but like, give me the structure. Does it basically mean, Chad, okay, if that's the case, set aside a long lunch, maybe like 2 hours, or would it be blocking off a Friday afternoon? This isn't a 15-minute discussion, right?
No, not to effectively create a positive change. If you tried to resolve this in a morning huddle, or if you tried to just sort of have this lunch and learn type meeting, you may be getting some notices from your employees saying they're leaving.
Right. Would this be off-site?
It can be if the office, if you still are in an environment where you would like to have that type of social distancing, if we're talking about today in the COVID times,
sure.
Then maybe it would be more appropriate, particularly for a large team, to maybe rent a small meeting room in a hotel or something, and where you can be spread out, and you can sometimes getting out of the dental environment and the dental office environment sort of creates, again, this neutral territory for people to be able to express how they're feeling.
What kind of questions would you open it? Wouldn't that, I'm just trying to even think myself, like it would probably be smart to open up with questions. Wouldn't you? Or I'm just trying to DIY this myself. So I'm no pro at it. I'm just simply asking questions. Like if I were taking notes going, would you then say, start off a meeting saying, how do you guys feel about each other lately? That's a lame question, but I'm just saying, how would you
Let's
open
cut
it
to
up?
The chase right there.
Right.
Give everybody pool noodles and say, express yourself.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how close are you to leaving?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get the truth. The way we started this was we actually had an exercise where the team were able to identify what the emotions that they were having in the practice on a typical day, and we defined what a typical day was. And out of that, and there was 2 pages of different emotions that they were surfacing and they shared. And so then we went ahead and facilitated, once they kind of finished that little exercise, we brought everybody back together and sort of flushed that out and identified what everyone's emotions were. And then we identified whether they were negative or positive emotions. And then we sort of saw where the repetitive ones were, where there was commonality in them. And then we sort of stepped our way through conversations about that, because and that's just the beginning. And you need to figure out, well, what is that? What are they making that mean? And then I kind of went into facilitating some other conversation of, okay, why do those emotions come up? What are the triggers? What are the circumstances in a typical day? And when we say typical, we mean your average day. It's not the most amazing day. It's not the worst day. It's your typical day. And so then the team was able to start sharing different triggers, and we cataloged them all. And again, we were able to, and going back to the emotion side, they realized that there was part of the pages were positive and part of the pages were negative, and we sort of created a fraction out of it. They counted them all up, and then how many of all of them were negative. And so and we talked about that. What does that mean to you? When you see that, what does that bring up? And what the dentists were able to also be able to do is they were able to sit back and hear and listen in a very genuine, non-threatening way how their team's feeling. And they were able to also share what's coming up for them. So the team was able to also see, like, oh, you know what? My bosses also are feeling a lot of the same things that we're feeling. And they're seeing, and I have to give it to you, this team were so honest and so genuine and so authentic. And the dentists were being very vulnerable, and they were sharing their vulnerabilities. They were sharing where they felt like they weren't measuring up, that they had the weight of all of their team members and their families on their shoulders, and what a large worry that was, because every decision they made was going to not only affect themselves and their home and just the office, but these people that they saw as family and their extended family. So it was really truly just sort of a clearing. We didn't sing Kumbaya. It wasn't like, all of that, but
well, see, that's probably where you dropped the ball, in my opinion.
There you go.
You needed to put a big, like, everyone put it in a bucket together, and you light a flame to it and sing a song, that we will never do these things again. Yeah. But that's maybe why I'm not a coach. Yeah. But then, she's like, whatever, shut up.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Chad. Sure. But then we took the next step, which is this can be the hard part, the tricky part.
Okay.
Is who has control over your emotions? Ultimately, who has control over that in a day? And then we went into the distinction of choice versus decision, and had a pretty deep conversation around what that means.
Like how you show up in a day, your choice to how you show up and how you react to things. Is that what you mean?
No, it's a little deeper. So I took, there was a course that I took several years ago. It was a pretty extensive, and it was a leadership and sort of a personal development course. And they spent hours on the distinction between these two words of choice and decision. And one of the things that they really spent a lot of time on is how words have so much power in our world. Mm-hmm. And that when we understand the power of that, they really become instruments for freedom and empowerment and creation. And then, so when you really unpack these two words and look at decision and choice through a different lens, it opens up something for you. So when you look at the word decision, the Latin root word of that means to kill off. So when you're deciding something, you're killing off an alternative. The other family members, other words in the same family are suicide, which means to intentionally kill yourself. Pesticide, which means to kill off something. So when we make a decision, what we're essentially doing is that we're killing off the choice or something else. So an example would be, should I date this person or shouldn't I date this person? And you draw this line, this T on the page, and you have your pros and your cons. And what you're doing is you're really limiting your options right in that moment, because you're allowing this page, whichever side is heavier, to make the decision for you. So,
because you can do both.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So what you're doing is that you're giving up the freedom and the flexibility, and you're becoming trapped in the rightness or the wrongness or the meaning that you're making in that decision. So we become victims of that decision. And it's that decision's fault for the reason of I am in the situation that I'm in. Choice, when you're actually taking choice, is we're actually considering everything. You just consider everything that's going on, and then you make the choice free and clear. You're free of this inevitability of decisions, like, oh, this is the way it's always going to be, so I just have to go along with it. So the power of choice is very uniquely human, and we get to create and set our course and be the authors of our life when you're really truly standing in that kind of clearing. So when you truly understand that freedom from it, you're able to select something void of meaning. You're just choosing it because I choose it. So I'm sure that Chad has had to make some hard decisions or choices recently in his own practice. And you do it, he considers, and then he just makes the choice freely, clear of emotion, clear of meaning, but from a real place of power.
Joanne, that you just alluded to it. That's something that I'll speak to in an extra that we'll throw on there. Reagan, shall we call that a deep dive extra podcast, monocast, something like that. But it reminds me a lot, actually, when you were talking about the etymology of decision or to decide. In EOS, when we put up our options and we do a keep, kill, or combine. And so, it's just like, okay, out of this list of options, which ones do you want to keep? Which ones are similar enough that you want to combine, and which ones actually aren't issues right now that we need to deal with or a decision that we need to make and stuff like that. But yeah, I allude to that in our deeper dive, that I owned up to the fact that it's my decision. I mean, I had control over this situation, and right or wrong, because it didn't turn out spectacular, but I was in charge of my fate. Either that or I let fate control me, and I didn't want fate controlling the narrative.
Right. And so we did that exercise, and it was beautiful because there were a lot of light bulbs that went off. I could actually see the team exhale in that moment. And they're like, and when I asked, I said, so what are your thoughts? What did you hear in that? And they all were like, I never thought of it that way. I never thought that I was really attaching this meaning or attaching this right or wrong to these decisions I've made. That I need to really be making a choice. It's subtle, but it's powerful. And again, like I said, in this course I took, they spent almost half a day in this. So there was a lot to unpack. But it's about owning. And when team members can just no longer blame other people and can see what this is a trigger. I know I'm behaving this way because of this. And then in that moment, they can choose. They can choose to continue down that road, or they can choose to empower themselves and help each other keep above the fray and stay in the positive emotion versus going negative.
Can you combine that with explaining what some of the triggers were that came to the surface? Because I think that's a tangible, empowering thing that can happen to any team member. You don't have to be the boss or owner of the practice to control that fate. What kind of triggers came up during the day?
So some of the typical ones where there was actual more than one person said these things was I like one of them for dental assistants where I'm always sterilizing. Why am I always the one having to sterilize? So-and-so is not always helping. The doctor's always running behind and they don't care about our time and that making us stay late. They don't really realize how hard we're working. Patients are just mean. Like I mentioned, that was a common one. Like patients are just mean right now.
Amen.
and then
do you think so too, Chad?
Well, listen, that's a broad brush.
Yeah, it is.
But for what it's worth, I think some people have learned to become more forgiving and more rolling with the punches and everything like that. And others have clammed up and become just more grouchy and this and that. Yeah. I mean, to say patience 100%, no, but I mean, there's some that it's just like, oh my goodness, take a chill pill.
Well, I think it just gets back to that COVID fatigue has hit everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the other big one is I'm so sick of gossiping. I'm so sick of the drama. So that was it. And then the interesting one that came up more than once was the feeling of not measuring up and not being good enough. And that came from quite a few different roles within the office, not just one department. And I think that can be sometimes a symptom of maybe we're spending way too much time talking about numbers and we're measuring, but we're forgetting that there's a link between when we're talking about metrics or measuring things, that's nothing more than our ability to measure the success of being the patient advocate and actually providing amazing experiences and patient care. But if you don't take the time to link those two things together and you just talk about numbers, then what ends up happening is that the team will start feeling like they're just not good enough. And there has to be this balance. You have to catch your team doing something right. And then you have to acknowledge it. One of the things I recommend is there's a book called The 5 Love Language, or not the 5 Love Languages, right? So that's a common relationship book. Well, they wrote a book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace.
Yes. And do you know what I appreciate about that book is that he acknowledges that a lot of times people feel like they want affirmation from the boss. But what I took from that book was that people actually, even though they say that, they actually want feedback from their peers.
Yes.
So a lot of times it's like, Chad, you as the boss should be leading the positive affirmation. While that's true, I feel like the hidden gem in that book was that as much as we point the finger to the boss, the employees also, you need to set up a culture where the coworkers are affirming one another. Did you find that in the book? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. And it is pivotal. As the boss, you're the leader and you help facilitate that for the whole team. A simple example of that could be in morning huddle, you finish the huddle with words of gratitude. What worked great yesterday? Point out something that the team member did yesterday. But you also have to, but as a team, you can work together and do the exercises to find out what are your languages of appreciation. Everyone has different languages. Some people like to be called out in public and have the spotlight put on them. Some people do not. Like that would have an adverse reaction to them if they're, it's something nice you're saying, but they don't want the spotlight. That actually makes them shrink. So it's also understanding what each other's languages are.
So, Joanne, if anybody who's listening to this podcast right now and has that feeling like your doctors were saying, we know something is off, but we're not sure where to start or what to do, what advice would you give them?
I think part of it is also just maybe stepping back and observing from a very unbiased space. Just listen from maybe a patient's perspective, or from somebody coming in and doing like a working interview and are observing your team to see, would I like to work here today? Looking at it through that lens and really going like, wow, I didn't notice this. I didn't notice that. And then you could have, if you feel comfortable, if you feel like there's a good environment where you feel that your team, if you did ask them those hard questions and they'll ask that, set aside a meeting, have the time, maybe read Crucial Conversations, the book first, or this, the 5 Languages of Appreciation, and kind of step into that and ask some questions just to be able to discover what's going on. You know what? Sometimes a lot of just appreciation goes a long way. We are working in a very different environment now. There was a lot of extra PPE you're having to put on. Things overall are taxing. If you were still wearing those N95 masks, you're not getting as much oxygen. You're more fatigued, even in a physical manner, not just emotionally. So it's really addressing that, having the time to get together as a team and just blow off some steam, have fun, those type of things. But I am going to circle around that if you are identifying that there is some true erosion and that it's emotional and you really, really do want to keep your team together, sometimes bringing in that third party that's neutral to be able to facilitate the discussion and then build a framework with some action steps and things that we're going to do to keep on a really good positive note and keep moving forward. And then all of it is centered around taking care of our patients.
Wow.
So something I'd like to point out to my listeners, if you want to find this, it's probably cataloged in July 2021, maybe August, somewhere in this zone. And Joanne can answer any follow-up questions that you might have to that point about, okay, what would that look like if you want to get a hold of us? So just write in the comment section on our Facebook page for Productive Dentist Academy. So that way we can get some dialogue, some interaction, and we'll follow up with you on that. Regan, what are your thoughts?
I think that, Joanne, you just gave us a lot of meat and a lot to think about and consider, and some nice tangible tips. So I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for all you do in dentistry. I'm grateful to work with you. I'm grateful for the work you're doing with teams, because this is an episode that helps practices, but it also helps any business owner that's looking to prevent this erosion in their own business. So thank you, Joanne. It's been a wonderful time. Absolutely.
It was a fun topic. It can be a little heavy, but it's fun too.
Well, thanks for bringing the lightness with it. And Chad, as always, it's a joy interviewing with you. Thank you so much. And
you as well.
See you guys in the next podcast.
Woohoo! Thanks for listening, everybody.
If you're anything like Dr. Chad Johnson and I, it's been far too long since we've got to laugh with our dental friends in person. That's why PDA is coming back and better than ever with our first live event in Texas. PDA co-founders Dr. Bruce Baird and Victoria Peterson welcome you home as we open our doors for 3 spectacular days of CE and a whole lot of fun with friends. This September 16th to 18th at the Westin Convention Center in Las Colinas, you can expect a program ready to give you all the elements of a productive practice. You and your team will learn how to comprehensively diagnose and treatment plan, how to schedule to increase productivity, not chair time, how to get your team aligned with your standard of care and co-diagnosing for a smooth patient experience, and how to seamlessly incorporate new technology and services. This year, we're also bringing in new special breakout sessions included in your tuition. Dental sleep medicine with sleep group solutions, authentic marketing strategy to attract your ideal patients, advanced clinical hygiene including oral systemic connection, and personal empowerment with Dentistry's Got Talent 2021 champion, Dr. Jeff Buski. With COVID precautions still in place, attendance is limited, and we have no doubt we will sell out fast. If you're ready to get out and know now's the time, head on over to productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seat. We can't wait to see you in Texas.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.